What is the Linux kernel and how it works? If your computer had no kernel, nothing would work. No apps. No files. No internet. Because the kernel is the invisible system that controls everything. It decides which program runs, how memory is used, and how software talks to hardware. Today, I'm going to explain exactly what the Linux kernel is, how it works, and why it powers most of the modern world. 1. What is the Linux kernel? In a modern computer system, many processes and applications run at the same time and compete for important system resources such as CPU time, memory, storage, and hardware devices. To make sure that all programs run efficiently, smoothly, and safely, a special software layer called the kernel is required. The Linux kernel is the core and most important component of the Linux operating system. The kernel is responsible for many critical tasks inside the system. It schedules CPU time for running processes, manages system memory, controls access to hardware devices, and prevents different processes from interfering with one another or crashing the entire system. The kernel also provides virtual resources and abstraction layers that allow applications to work without needing to understand the low-level details of the hardware. Because of this, software developers can write programs more easily without directly controlling disks, memory chips, or CPUs. By coordinating all of these tasks together, the kernel keeps the system stable, secure, responsive, and efficient. The Linux kernel sits between applications and hardware, acting like a bridge between software and the physical machine. Applications cannot directly access hardware devices such as the CPU, memory, keyboard, disk drives, or network cards. Instead, everything goes through the kernel first. Whenever an application needs something from the hardware, it sends a request to the kernel, and the kernel handles the communication. Linux is also open source, which means anyone can study, modify, and improve its source code. It was originally created by Linus Torvalds in 1991 as a personal project, but over time it became one of the most important software projects in the world. Today, the Linux kernel powers servers, cloud infrastructure, supercomputers, embedded systems, networking equipment, and even smartphones such as Android devices. 2. What does Linux kernel do? The Linux kernel works as the core layer between applications and hardware, managing all system resources through controlled interactions. When a program needs something, such as reading a file, allocating memory, or sending data, it makes a system call to the kernel. The kernel then schedules CPU time among processes, allocates and protects memory using virtual memory, communicates with hardware through device drivers, and ensures that processes remain isolated from each other. By coordinating these tasks efficiently, the kernel enables multiple programs to run simultaneously while maintaining system stability, security, and performance. Think of a computer as layers. At the top are applications. In the middle is the kernel. At the bottom is hardware. When an application needs something, it sends a request to the kernel. The kernel processes it and communicates with hardware. Then it returns the result. This controlled flow keeps the system stable and secure. 3. CPU scheduling. Multiple programs run at the same time. But the CPU can only execute one instruction at a time per core. So the kernel uses a scheduler. It decides which process runs and for how long. This is done using time slicing and context switching. The CPU rapidly switches between tasks. That's why everything feels like it runs at once. 4. Memory management. Each process needs memory. The kernel allocates memory and keeps processes isolated. This is done using virtual memory. Each program thinks it has its own memory space. But the kernel maps it to physical memory behind the scenes. This improves stability and security. 5. Device management. Applications cannot talk to hardware directly. The kernel uses device drivers. Drivers know how to control specific hardware. When you read a file or press a key, the kernel communicates with hardware through drivers. This makes the system portable and flexible. 6. File system. Everything is a file. In Linux, everything is treated as a file. The kernel provides a virtual file system. It supports multiple file systems like Extension 4 and NTFS. Applications use simple operations like read and write. The kernel translates these into hardware actions. This makes programming much simpler. 7. Networking. The kernel manages networking. It implements TCP/IP protocols. Applications use sockets to communicate. The kernel handles packet transmission and routing. This is why Linux dominates servers and cloud systems. 8. Inter-process communication. IPC. Processes often need to communicate. The kernel provides IPC mechanisms. These include pipes, shared memory, and signals. They allow processes to exchange data safely. This is essential for complex applications. 9. Security and isolation. The kernel enforces security. Applications run in user space. The kernel runs in protected mode. Programs cannot directly access critical resources. This prevents bugs and attacks from breaking the system. 10. Final understanding. The Linux kernel is the central control system. It manages CPU, memory, devices, files, networking, and security. Every program depends on it. Without it, the computer cannot function. Understanding the kernel means understanding how computers truly work. If you want to truly understand computers, don't stop at programming. Learn the kernel. Because once you understand the kernel, you understand the system. And once you understand the system, you can build anything.